Okay, so this worksheet is just for us to identify the A, B, and C values and to just plug them into our quadratic formula so that we know where each value goes before we do any solving. Okay, so the first thing that we need to remember is that our equation has to be set equal to 0. So I already see that this equation is so, therefore I know that this is going to be my A, this is going to be my B, and this is going to be my C. So A is going to equal 6, B is going to equal -2, and C is going to be -60. Okay? All right, so now we want to take our values and plug them into our formula. So from over here, we see that we're supposed to have a negative, which is there, and now our B value, which is -2. And then inside we're supposed to do B squared, so it would be -2 squared, minus 4 times our A value, which is 6, times our C value, which is -60, all divided by 2 times A, which is, again, 6. Okay. All right, on number 2, this one is not set equal to 0, so therefore I'm going to have to do some work in order to get it set up the way that I need to. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and subtract 28 from both sides. So that's going to zero out, and then I'm left with 12x squared plus 16x minus 28 equals 0. So now I can identify A, B, and C. So my A is going to be 12, my B is going to be 16, and my C is going to be -28. And now I'll plug them into my formula. So we're going to have negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2A. Okay, let's go on to number 3. Okay, so this one is already set up in the form that we need it to be in, so we can go ahead and start identifying our values and plugging them in. So A is going to be -2, B is going to be -1, and C is going to be 6. So now we'll plug those values in. So we have negative B, which is -1, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2A. Okay. Number 4. Now this time I have 2 terms on each side of the equal sign, so I'm going to have to do a little bit more work. So first, I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. So that leaves me with x squared minus 5x plus 8 equals 2. And now to get this side to be 0, I'm just going to subtract 2 from both sides. So then I'm left with x squared minus 5x, and 8 minus 2 gives me a positive 6. And this equals 0. Okay, so from here I can see that my A value is 1, my B value is -5, and my C value is 6. So we'll plug these in. So we have negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2A. All right, number 5. Okay, so this time I'm going to have to subtract the 40x on both sides. So this is going to zero out, and then I would have 0 equals negative 12x squared minus 40x minus 28. Now, let me pause right here, because since our A value, and we know that -12 is our A value because that's what's attached to the x squared, because it is negative, I know a lot of y'all are going to think I have to move it over here to get it to be positive, and that's not necessarily true. It doesn't matter if it's when we have it set up like this with all the values that are in line with it, as long as I've worked everything out correctly. It doesn't matter which way I move the numbers to which side. I can do it either way. So just so you know, you don't have to do it one way only. Okay, so now let's identify our A, B, and C. So A is going to be negative 12, B is going to be negative 40, and C is going to be negative 28. Now I'm going to plug those in to my formula. So that's going to be negative B, which is negative 40, plus or minus the square root of B squared, so that's going to be negative 40 squared, minus 4 times A, so that's negative 12, times C, which is negative 28, all divided by 2A, which is, again, negative 12. Okay, so now we can flip over to the other side. Okay, so now on the back side, it just wants us to write the numbers in the appropriate blanks in the quadratic formula, and it's telling us not to solve. So here it says a rocket is launched from atop a 101-foot cliff with an initial velocity of 116 feet per second. And they're giving us this equation, 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 116t plus 101. And it tells us to use the quadratic formula to find out how long the rocket will take to hit the ground after it is launched. But we're not actually going to find the solutions. We're just going to set up our formula. So first, let's identify our A, B, and C. So I know A is going to be negative 16. B is going to be 116. And C is going to be 101. So now I'm ready to plug them into my formula. So I have negative B, which is 116, plus or minus the square root of B squared, minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2A. And that's all we have to do on that one. Okay, so going on to number 7. It says a diver is standing on a platform 20 feet above the pool. He jumps from the platform with an initial upward velocity of 8 feet per second. Use the equation 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 8t plus 24 in the quadratic formula to determine how long it will take him to hit the water. Again, we're not going to find out, or we're not going to solve it to find out how long it's going to take. We're just going to identify our variables and, or not our variables, each of our term values, and then plug those into our formula. So I see that A equals negative 16 right here, and then B equals 8, and C equals 24. Okay, so now let's plug it in. So I have negative, and then my B, 8 plus or minus B squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2A. And that's all we have to do for that one. Okay, so number 8. Which of the following correctly shows the quadratic formula being used for the equation x squared plus 4x plus 13 equals 0? So I know that by looking at my equation, A is going to be 1, B is going to be 4, and C is going to be 13. So now I want to see which one is set up correctly. So I know that I'm going to have to start off with a negative 4 because that is my B value. So I can tell right away A is not right because it's negative 13. C is not right because it's a negative 1. But both B and D have the negative 4, so I'm going to have to go further into it to see what they have next. So the next thing I would have after the plus and minus and the square root is the B squared, which again would be 4. So I see that's in B, but it's not in D, so that means D is not it, and B is my correct answer. Okay, number 9. Which of the following correctly shows the quadratic formula being used for the equation 2x squared minus 7x plus 11 equals 0? Okay, so again, let's identify each of our terms. A equals 2, B equals negative 7, and C equals 11. So I know that my equation, since this is negative, when I plug that into my formula, that value in the front is going to be a positive 7. So let's see, A is not going to work because it's negative 2. B is not going to work because it's negative 11. I have a positive 7 here, but I have a negative 1 here on D, so that leaves me with C. And that is all we have to do for this worksheet.